All right, here we go with another Revenge of the Sith live reading. Only got a couple folks last time, but we'll see if this one picks up at all. And it's nice to keep going with the trend. I really need to figure out how you work. That one's annoying. Howdy, Cecilia. So long, Cecilia. But let's see. Has anything new been going on in Star Wars? I don't know. I mostly have been going through the same books I've been on for a while. Howdy, Panda. Howdy, Corbin. Welcome, both of you. Good morning to you. I always feel a little hesitant about saying good morning because I'm like, I have no clue what time zone anyone is in. I know that there are people who, like, it's probably late evening right now, including family of mine. But, rise and shine to Alex One Kenobi. We just did, someone offered up, like, the Star Wars version of my name, and I liked it. It was, like, Alex, like, Aelyx. And I don't know, the last name was like Lethros. I'm like, I vibe with that. I like Alex. It's close enough to Alex. It's about as lazy as George would be, but with a little bit of Star Warsy flair. Howdy, Beta, welcome. So in a minute, I always give a couple minutes for people to show up if they want to join. We're going to be reading Chapter 3 of Revenge of the Sith today. So anyone who wants to stick around can hear. Let's see. Chapter 3 is them finding Dooku, finding Palpatine, and I believe, yeah, this is the beginning of the fight. Book club today, exactly. Oh, you're just happening across this? Oh, nice. Oh, and thank you, Hunter, for the follow. I'm glad to have you. I hope you enjoy as we dive in. This is, in my opinion, one of the best parts of the book as you get to the fight with Dooku. There are some people who've complained about how long it is, and there's even a note in this. Actually, that'll be a good one to read while I, give. I'll probably start at like 10:05, 10:06. Give just a couple minutes for people who know I do these. But he talks about why writing the scene. So, like, the crash of the invisible hand happens like a third of the way through this book, and he's been asked about why so much of the book is front-loaded. Like, in the movie, it only takes 15 minutes, and while I can't find the note itself, I don't remember exactly which page it's on. Stover talks about, like, yeah, people ask me why I made so much of it at the beginning, and he said, I didn't know that they were only going to make the crashing of the ship 15 minutes. I based this on the script, which, like, the ship crashes on page 45. I didn't know it was going to go so quickly. Had I might have done things differently. Which, I can see it. It takes a lot more words to write the combat sequence as opposed to, like, it's happening in, minutes on screen. Ooh. Welcome, everyone. We're reading Chapter 3 of Revenge of the Sith, as I said. I'm sure many of you will just be passing by, but glad to have you for a minute. I think we'll start in about a minute. Because this is the deluxe edition that just came out with all the author's notes from Matthew Stover, and truly anything the man writes is entertaining. I've read, like, my favorite book of his is called Heroes Die, and there's a section at the back that's like interview with the author, and it's just delightful. Every question he gives is fantastic. Liam, what are your pronouns? They're he, him. I'm a simple boy. But I appreciate the question. I'm always glad to encourage sort of politeness. They sold your Nissan Pathfinder to the Costa Rican government? That's not great. Should ask for it back. They'd be nice about it. Welcome, Real Alf. How are we going so early today? This is the time I always do my Revenge of the Sith readings. Although, I say always, I've done it twice. But those I tend to go earlier. Just, get a little bit of reading to start my day. You're making Thanksgiving. Oh, nice. Like, are you celebrating early? Like, you're unavailable on Thursday? Or you're prepping everything? You're gearing up? And yeah, Alf, you usually see the evening streams. Thursdays, yeah, it's 7 p.m. EST. But then I do Revenge of the Sith now at 10 on Sundays, and I'm going back and forth on when I want to pick back up on Knights of the Old Republic, because I do still want to finish that, but I don't know, I've been struggling to get to it, especially because TikTok keeps banning me and not letting me stream from my computer. And let's see, Corbin, a Friendsgiving. Oh, that's nice. That's fun, too. I hope you enjoy. It's Sunday, yes. A reading from... Yes, of course. I had to make sure to catch people. Instead of going to church, they can come here. Is my barber mad at me? Probably. My hair's gotten real long. I don't have a set barber, but I need to get a haircut sometime. Movie is always better than the book? Oh, not in this case. Not even close. Holy cow, this one is so much better. You stick around and listen to Chapter 3. We're going to be reading the Anakin and Obi-Wan making their way through the Invisible Hand, and you're about to hear just how much better the book is than the movie. Much as I like the movie, it's not even a comparison. All right. Let's dive in, everyone. Because Chapter 3 is The Way of the Sith. The turbolift's door wished open. Anakin pressed himself against the wall, a litter of saber-sliced droid parts around his feet. Beyond appeared to be a perfectly ordinary lift lobby, pale and bare and empty. Made it, at last. Anakin's whole body hummed to the tune of his blue-hot blade. Anakin... Obi-Wan stood against the opposite wall. He looked calm in a way Anakin could barely understand. He gave a significant stare down at the lightsaber in Anakin's hand. "Anakin, rescue," he said softly. "Not mayhem." Anakin kept his weapon right where it was. "And Dooku?" "Once the Chancellor is safe," Obi-Wan said with a ghost of a smile, "we can blow up the ship." Anakin's mechanical fingers tightened until the grip of his lightsaber creaked. "I'd rather do it by hand." Obi-Wan slipped cautiously through the turbolift's door. Nothing shot at him. He beckoned. "I know this is difficult, Anakin. I know it's personal for you on many levels. You must take extra care to be mindful of your training here, and not only your combat training." Heat rose in Anakin's cheeks. "I am not your Padawan anymore," snarled inside his head, but that was adrenaline talking. He bit back the words and said instead, "Going to let you down, Master, or Chancellor Palpatine." "I have no doubt about that. Just remember that Dooku is no mere dark Jedi like that Ventress woman. He is a Lord of the Sith. The jaws of this trap are about to snap shut, and there may be danger here beyond the merely physical." "Yes." Anakin let his blade shrink away and moved past Obi-Wan into the turbolift lobby. Distant concussions boomed throughout the ship, and the floor rocked like a raft on a river in flood. He barely noticed. There has been so much... what he's done. Not just to the Jedi, but to the galaxy." "Anakin," Obi-Wan began warningly. "Don't worry. I'm not angry, and I'm not looking for revenge. I'm just..." He lifted his lightsaber. "I'm just looking forward to ending it. Anticipation is a distraction, I know. And I know that hope is as hollow as fear." Anakin let himself smile just a bit. "And I know everything else you're dying to tell me right now." Obi-Wan's slightly rueful bow of acknowledgement was as affectionate as a hug. "I suppose at some point I will eventually have to stop trying to train you." Anakin's smile broadened towards a soft chuckle. "I think that's the first time you've ever admitted it." See, let me take a pause. Oh, thank you, Zayden, for the follow. You're kind of a prequel hater, but you got your wife into Star Wars and she loves Revenge of the Sith. It's, I absolutely get what people like about it. I push back a little on, is it good? But, what's not to love? Anakin and Obi are great. They stopped at the door to the general's quarters, a huge oval of opalescent iridite chased with gold. Anakin stared at his ghostly, almost reflection while he reached into the room beyond with the Force and let the Force reach into him. "I'm ready, Master." "I know you are." They stood a moment, side by side. Anakin didn't look at him. He stared into the door, through the door, searching in its shimmering depths for a hint of an unguessable future. He couldn't imagine not being at war. Anakin. Obi-Wan's voice had gone soft, and his hand was warm on Anakin's arm. There is no other Jedi I would rather have at my side right now. No other man. Anakin turned, and found within Obi-Wan's eyes a depth of feeling he had only rarely glimpsed in all their years together, and the pure, uncomplicated love that rose up within him then felt like a promise from the Force itself. I wouldn't have it any other way, Master. I believe, his one-time master said with a gently humorous look of astonishment at the words coming out of his mouth, that you should get used to calling me Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan, Anakin said. Let's go get the Chancellor. Yes, Obi-Wan said. Let's. Oh, thank you, Dev, for the finger hearts. Oh, and you're getting a birthday reading? Happy birthday, Beta. I'm glad you're joining me here on such a special day. And thank you, Jennifer, for the follow. These moments are really what make the book sing. It's what Revenge of the Sith, the movie, like tries to do, showing like how close Anakin and Obi-Wan have become, but this really sells it, you know, those moments where like Anakin teases him about still trying to train him, and Obi-Wan says like, no, you really have grown into your own. Get used to calling me Obi-Wan. Oh. And he never really gets to. Poor guy. Gosh, actually, yeah. I don't want to read too many of the author's notes, partially because it feels like I'm sort of undercutting the deluxe edition. I feel like people should buy it themselves. It's great. But this one, I want to... Writing this scene broke me a little. This is who Anakin and Obi-Wan were supposed to be to each other forever. This is the relationship they should have had for the rest of their lives. If that doesn't hurt a bit, I don't understand you at all. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah. And that's exactly why, you know, he goes so hard on it. You already bought it for your wife for Christmas. Hell yeah. Gosh, if she liked the movie, I hope she adores the book. I worry, especially because this, the way I'm going to phrase the sentence may sound worse, but especially being a woman, I have to imagine she's probably fond of Padme, just because I know she's very popular among female viewers. And Padme is one of the more controversial elements of the book, so I really hope she likes her in it. I've always defended the way that Padme is written, but I know that some people aren't crazy about it. But either way, I hope that your wife adores this half as much as I do. What if Obi-Wan would have joined instead of Anakin? It'd never happen. He's just too good. It's a beautiful book. You look forward to purchasing it through your link. Oh, thank you, Corbin. I almost want to reach out again. I texted the bookseller on TikTok saying, like, hey, before the deluxe edition came out, I said, like, you know, Revenge of the Sith, the novelization, you're out of stock. Do you think you could restock it? Because, like, I want to give people the option of getting the regular version. Both are the same great book, but they still, to my knowledge, have not. So hopefully soon. But in the meantime, we've got the deluxe at least. All right, let me adjust myself. I can feel my diaphragm being restricted. I want to make sure to get those dulcet tones out as we continue. Inside a turbolift pod, Dooku watched hologrammic images of Kenobi and Skywalker cautiously pick their way down the curving stairs from the entrance balcony to the main level of the general's quarters, moving slowly to stay braced against the pitching of the cruiser. The ship shuddered and bucked with multiple torpedo bursts, and the lights went out again. Lighting was always the first to fail as power was diverted from life support to damage control. "My lord!" On the intraship comm, Grievous sounded actively concerned. "Damage to this ship is becoming severe. 30% of automated weapons systems are down, and we may soon lose hyperspace capability." Dooku nodded judiciously to himself, frowning down at the translucent blue ghosts slinking toward Palpatine. "Sound the retreat for the entire strike force, General, and prepare the ship for jump. Once the Jedi are dead, I will join you on the bridge." "As my lord commands. Grievous, out." "Indeed you are, you vile creature," Dooku muttered to the dead comlink. "Out of luck and out of time." He cast the comlink aside and ignored its clatter across the deck. He had no further use for it. Let it be destroyed along with Grievous, those repulsive bodyguards of his, and the rest of the cruiser, once he was safely captured and away. He nodded to the two hulking super battle droids that flanked him. One opened the lift door, and they marched through, pivoting to take positions on either side. Dooku straightened his cloak of shimmering armor weave and strode grandly into the half-dark lift lobby. In the pale emergency lighting, the door to the general's quarters still smoldered where those two idiotic peasants had lightsabered it. To pick his way through the hole would risk getting his trousers scorched. Dooku sighed and gestured, and the opalescent wreckage of the door silently slid itself out of his way. He certainly did not intend to fight two Jedi with his pants on fire. So good. Posture check. God, I have to do that constantly. I slouch all the time. I repeatedly need to make sure, you're killing yourself. And thank you so much, 9Volt, for the follow. I'm glad to have you. I love, he's so good at writing Dooku's haughtiness, you know. He wouldn't fight two Jedi with his pants on fire. Shame, because he's a liar, isn't he? Anakin slid along the bank of chairs on one side of the immense situation table that dominated the center of the general's quarters main room. Obi-Wan mirrored him on the other side. Silent lightning flashed and flared. The room's sole illumination came from the huge curving view wall at its far end, a storm of turbolaser blasts and flak bursts, and the miniature supernova that were the deaths of entire ships. A stark shadow against that backdrop of carnage, the silhouette of one tall chair. Anakin caught Obi-Wan's eye across the table and nodded toward the dark shape ahead. Obi-Wan replied with the Jedi hand signal for approach with caution, and added the signal for be ready for action. Anakin's mouth compressed, like he needed to be told. After all the trouble they'd had with the turbo lifts, anything could be up here by now. The place could be full of droidicas for all they knew. The lights came back on. Anakin froze. The dark figure in the chair. It was Chancellor Palpatine. It was. And there were no droids to be seen, and his heart should have leapt within his chest, but Palpatine looked bad. The Chancellor looked beyond old, looked ancient like Yoda was ancient, possessed of incomprehensible age, and exhausted and in pain. And worse, Anakin saw in the Chancellor's face something he'd never dreamed he'd find there, and it squeezed breath from his lungs and wiped words from his brain. Palpatine looked frightened. Anakin didn't know what to say. He couldn't imagine what to say. All he could imagine was what Grievous and Dooku must have done to put fear on the face of this brave, good man. And that imagining ignited a sizzle in his blood that drew his face tight and clouded his heart and started again the low roll of thunder in his ears. Thunder from Argonar, from Jabim. Thunder from the Tusken camp. If Obi-Wan was struck by any similar distress, it was invisible. With his customary grave courtesy, the Jedi Master inclined his head. "Chancellor," he said, a calmly respectful greeting as though they had met by chance on the grand concourse of the Galactic Senate. Palpatine's only response was a tight murmur. "Anakin, behind you!" Anakin didn't turn. He didn't have to. It wasn't just the clack of boot heels and the clank of magnapeds crossing the threshold of the entrance balcony. The Force gathered within him and around him, in a sudden clench like the fists of a startled man. In the Force, he could feel the focus of Palpatine's eyes, the source of the fear that rolled off him in billows like vapor down a block of frozen air. And he could feel the even colder wave of power, colder than the frost on a Minox's mouth, that slid into the room behind him like an ice dagger into his back. Funny, he thought. After Ventress, somehow I always expect the dark side to be hot. Something unlocked in his chest. The thunder in his ears dissolved into red smoke that coiled at the base of his spine. His lightsaber found his hand, and his lips peeled off his teeth in a smile that a crate dragon would have recognized. That trouble he was having with talking went away. "This," he murmured to Palpatine, and to himself, "is not a problem." The voice that spoke from the entrance balcony was an elegant basso with undernotes of oily resonance like a green oak cavern horn. Count Dooku's voice.
General Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, gentlemen, a term I use in its loosest possible sense, you are my prisoners.
Now, Anakin didn't have any troubles at all. Howdy, Brandon, welcome. The entrance balcony provided an appropriate angle, far above the Jedi looking down on them, for Dooku to make final assessments before beginning the farce. Like all true farce, the coming denouement would proceed with remorseless logic from its ridiculous premises, that Dooku could ever be overcome by mere Jedi. Any Jedi. What a pity his old friend Mace couldn't have joined them today. He had no doubt the Korun Master would have enjoyed the coming show. Dooku had always preferred an educated audience. At least Palpatine was here, shackled within the great chair at the far end of the room, the space battle whirling upon the view wall behind him as though his stark silhouette spread great wings of war. But Palpatine was less audience than he was author. Not at all the same thing. Skywalker gave Dooku only his back, but his blade was already out, and his tall, lean frame stood frozen with anticipation. So motionless he almost seemed to shiver. Pathetic. It was an insult to call this boy a Jedi at all. Howdy, Paige, welcome. And thank you for the gifts, huh? Am I trying to get into voice acting at all? A little. I've never pursued it too hard, but I want to. I should. And thank you for saying that I do a close approximation of their voices. I could do even better if I weren't, switching back and forth. Kenobi now, he was something else entirely. A classic of his obsolete kind. He simply stood, gazing calmly up at Dooku and the super battle droids that flanked him, hands open, utterly relaxed, on his face only an expression of mild interest. Dooku derived a certain melancholy satisfaction, a pleasurably lonely contemplation of his own unrecognized greatness. From a brief reflection that Skywalker would never understand how much thought and planning, how much work Lord Sidious had invested in so hastily orchestrating his sham victory. Nor would he ever understand the artistry, the true mastery that Dooku would wield in his own defeat. But thus was life. Sacrifices must be made for the greater good. There was a war on, after all. He called upon the Force, gathering it to himself and wrapping himself within it. He breathed it in and held it whirling inside his heart, clenching down upon it until he could feel the spin of the galaxy around him, until he became the axis of the universe. This was the real power of the dark side, the power he had suspected even as a boy, had sought through his long life, until Darth Sidious had shown him that it had been his all along. The dark side didn't bring him to the center of the universe. It made him the center. He drew power into his innermost being until the Force itself existed only to serve his will. Now the scene below subtly altered, though to the physical eye there was no change. Powered by the dark side, Dooku's perception took the measure of those below him with exhilarating precision. Kenobi was luminous, a transparent being, a window onto a sunlit meadow of the Force. Skywalker was a storm cloud, flickering with dangerous lightning, building the rotation that threatens a tornado. And then there was Palpatine, of course. He was beyond power. He showed nothing of what might be within. Though seen with the eyes of the dark side itself, Palpatine was an event horizon. Beneath his ordinary surface was an absolute, perfect nothingness. Darkness beyond darkness. A black hole of the Force. And he played his helpless hostage role perfectly. "Get help!" The edge of panic in his hoarse half-whisper sounded real even to Dooku. "You must get help! Neither of you is any match for a Sith Lord!" Now Skywalker turned, meeting Dooku's direct gaze for the first time since the abandoned hangar on Geonosis. His reply was clearly intended as much for Dooku as for Palpatine. Tell that to the one Obi-Wan left in pieces on Naboo. Humph. Empty bravado. Maul had been an animal, a skilled animal, but a beast nonetheless. Anakin. In the Force, Dooku could feel Kenobi's disapproval of Skywalker's boasting, and he could also feel Kenobi's effortless self-restraint in focusing on the matter at hand.
This time we do it together. Dooku's sharp eye picked up the tightening of Skywalker's droid hand on his lightsaber's grip. I was about to say exactly that. Fine, then. Time to move this little comedy along. Let me take a little break and get some water. Oh, thank you for the follow, Galactus. I appreciate it. And thank you for the Sweaty Teddy's Real Alpha. I appreciate those as well. Paige, of course, again, thank you. All the gifts. Oh, you're also kind today. I'm going to take a second. I'm actually just going to catch my breath. I worry, I try to read briskly and keep the energy of the book going, but it catches up to you. You need more deluxe editions of the novelizations that match the design of this one. I'd be mildly interested in deluxe versions of the other novels, but none of the others are quite as good. So it's like, I'm not chomping at the bit for them. Clones isn't bad. I haven't actually read Phantom Menace, and I've read all the sequel ones, and they're all just okay. I still need to get to the originals, though. That one, though, we've gotten some deluxe novelizations. I mean, look at this thing. Gorgeous. Nice hardcover. Let me... try and rinse. All right. Dooku leaned forward, and his cloak of armor weave spread like wings. He lifted gently into the air and descended to the main level in a slow, dignified force glide. Touching down at the head of the situation table, he regarded the two Jedi from under a lifted brow. "Your weapons, please, gentlemen. Let's not make a mess of this in front of the Chancellor." Obi-Wan lifted his lightsaber into the balanced two-handed guard of Ataro, Qui-Gon's style and Yoda's. His blade crackled into existence, and the air smelled of lightning. "You won't escape us this time, Dooku." "Escape you, please." Dooku allowed his customary mild smile to spread. "Do you think I orchestrated this entire operation with the intent to escape? I could have taken the Chancellor out system hours ago, but I have better things to do with my life than to babysit him while I wait for the pair of you to attempt a rescue." Skywalker brought his lightsaber to a Shien ready, hand of black-gloved durasteel cocked high at his shoulder, blade angling upward and away. This is little more than an attempt, and a little less than a rescue. With a flourish, Dooku cast his cloak back from his right shoulder, clearing his sword arm, which he used to gesture idly at the pair of super battle droids still on the entrance balcony above. "Now please, gentlemen, must I order the droids to open fire? That becomes so untidy, what with the blaster bolts bouncing around at random. Little danger to the three of us, of course, but I should certainly hate for any harm to come to the Chancellor." Kenobi moved toward him with a slow, hypnotic grace, as though he floated on an invisible repulsor plate. "Why do I find that difficult to believe?" Skywalker mirrored him, swinging wide toward Dooku's flank. "You weren't so particular about bloodshed on Geonosis." "Ah." Dooku's smile spread even farther. "And how is Senator Amidala?" "Don't." The thunderstorm that was Skywalker in the Force boiled with sudden power. "Don't even speak her name." Dooku waved this aside. The lad's personal issues were too tiresome to pursue. He knew far too much already about Skywalker's messy private life. "I bear Chancellor Palpatine no ill will, foolish boy. He is neither soldier nor spy, whereas you and your friend here are both. It is only an unfortunate accident of history that he has chosen to defend a corrupt republic against my endeavor to reform it." "You mean destroy it?" "The Chancellor is a civilian. You and General Kenobi, on the other hand, are legitimate military targets. It is up to you whether you will accompany me as captives." A twitch of the Force brought his lightsaber to his hand with invisible speed, its brilliant scarlet blade angled downward at his side. "Or as corpses." "Now there's a coincidence," Kenobi replied dryly as he swung around Dooku to place the Count precisely between Skywalker and himself. "You face the identical choice." Dooku regarded each of them in turn with impregnable calm. He lifted his blade in the Makashi salute and swept it again to a low guard. Just because there are two of you, do not presume you have the advantage. Oh, we know, Skywalker said, because there are two of you. Dooku barely managed to restrain a jolt of surprise. Or maybe I should say, there were two of you, the young Jedi went on. We're on to your partner, Sidious. We tracked him all over the galaxy. He's probably in Jedi custody right now. Is he? Dooku relaxed. He was terribly, terribly tempted to wink at Palpatine, but of course that would never do. How fortunate for you. Quite simple in the end, he thought. Isolate Skywalker, slaughter Kenobi. Beyond that, it would be merely a matter of spinning Skywalker up into enough of a frenzy to break through his Jedi restraint and reveal the infinite vista of Sith power. Lord Sidious would take it from there. Surrender. Kenobi's voice deepened into finality. You will be given no further chance. Dooku lifted an eyebrow. Unless one of you happens to be carrying Yoda in his pocket, I hardly think I shall need one. The Force crackled between them, and the ship pitched and bucked under a new turbo-laser barrage, and Dooku decided that the time had come. He flicked a false glance over his shoulder, a hint of distraction to draw the attack, and all three of them moved at once. Oh, we'll take another pause there. Let's see. You think that The Rise of Skywalker novelization was pretty good? It is, actually. As far as, improvement on the movie, it's one of my next favorites after this one. And thank you, Matthew, for the follow. I think Rise of Skywalker... a drop of water on my precious book. Rise of Skywalker, yeah, it does what it can, and it's a tremendous improvement on the film, but I think it just doesn't do quite as much transformation as this, Hello there, So. What are you reading, B? I'm reading the Revenge of the Sith novelization, the deluxe edition specifically. But yeah, Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover, who captured the banter between them very well. Yes, all of the dialogue in this is so good. Stover really has a knack for character. Your favorite Star Wars book ever. Mine as well. It's a masterpiece. Hence me bringing it to as many people as I can. Let's see, how are we doing? Yeah. Oh. And yeah, speaking of, let's jump back in. Let me posture check again. The ship shuddered, and the red smoke surged from Anakin's spine into his arms and legs and head, and when Dooku gave the slightest glance of concern over his shoulder, distracted for half an instant, Anakin just couldn't wait anymore. He sprang, lightsaber angled for the kill. Obi-Wan leapt from Dooku's far side in perfect coordination, and they met in midair, for the Sith Lord was no longer between them. Anakin looked up just in time to glimpse the bottom of Dooku's Rancor leather boot as it came down on his face and smacked him tumbling toward the floor. He reached into the Force to effortlessly right himself and touched down in perfect balance to spring again toward the lightning flares, scarlet against sky blue, that sprayed from clashing lightsabers as Dooku pressed Obi-Wan away with a succession of weaving, flourishing thrusts that drove the Jedi's blade out of line while they reached for his heart. Anakin launched himself at Dooku's back, and the Count half-turned, gesturing casually while holding Obi-Wan at bay with an elegant one-handed bind. Chairs leapt up from the situation table and whirled towards Anakin's head. He slashed the first one in half contemptuously, but the second caught him across the knees, and the third battered his shoulder and knocked him down. He snarled to himself and reached through the Force to pick up some chairs of his own, and the situation table itself slammed into him and drove him back to crush him against the wall. His lightsaber came loop from his slackening fingers and clattered across the tabletop to drop to the floor on the far side, and Dooku barely even seemed to be paying attention to him. Pinned, breathless, half-stunned, Anakin thought, if this keeps up, I am going to get mad. That's exactly the point. Oh. While effortlessly deflecting a rain of blue streaking cuts from Kenobi, Dooku felt the Force shove the situation table away from the wall and send it hurtling towards his back with astonishing speed. He barely managed to lift himself enough that he could back-roll over it instead of having it shatter his spine. My, he said, chuckling. The boy has some power after all. His back roll brought him to his feet directly in front of the lad, who was charging, headlong and unarmed, after the table he had tossed, and was already thoroughly red in the face. I'm twice the Jedi I was last time. Ah, Dooku thought, such a fragile little ego. Sidious will have to help him with that. But until then... The grip of Skywalker's blade whistled through the air to meet his hand in perfect synchrony with a sweeping slash. My powers have doubled since we last met. How lovely for you. Dooku neatly sidestepped, cutting at the boy's leg. Yet Skywalker's blade met the cut as he passed, and he managed to sweep his blade behind his head to slap aside the casual thrust Dooku aimed at the back of his neck. But his clumsy charge had put him in Kenobi's path, so that the Jedi Master had to force roll over his partner's head, directly at Dooku's upraised blade. Kenobi drove a slash at the Scarlet Blade while he pivoted in the air, and again Dooku sidestepped so that now it was Kenobi in Skywalker's way. Really, Dooku said, this is pathetic. Oh, they were certainly energetic enough, leaping and whirling, raining blows almost at random, cutting chairs to pieces and force-hurling them in every conceivable direction, while Dooku continued, in his gracefully methodical way, to outmaneuver them so thoroughly it was all he could do to keep from laughing out loud. It was a simple matter of countering their tactics, which were depressingly straightforward. Skywalker was the swift one, whooshing here and there like a spastic hawkbat, attempting a Jedi variant of Neek in the middle so that they could come at him from both sides, while Kenobi came on in a measured Shi-Cho cadence, deliberate as a lumber droid, moving step by step, cutting off the angles, clumsy but relentlessly dogged as he tried to chivvy Dooku into a corner. Whereas all Dooku need do was to slip from one side to another, and occasionally flip over a head here and there, so that he could fight each of them in turn, rather than both of them at the same time. He supposed that in their own milieu they might actually prove reasonably effective. It was clear that their style had been developed by fighting as a team against large numbers of opponents. They were not prepared to fight together against a single Force user. Certainly not one of Dooku's power. He, on the other hand, had always fought alone. It was laughably easy to keep the Jedi tripping and stumbling and getting in each other's way. They didn't even comprehend how utterly he dominated the combat. Because they fought as they had been trained, by releasing all desire and allowing the Force to flow through them, they had no hope of countering Dooku's mastery of Sith techniques. They had learned nothing since he had bested them on Geonosis. They allowed the Force to direct them. Dooku directed the Force. Let me take another moment. At least until TCW retconned all that. Yeah, it's very funny hearing him say, like, yes, we haven't met since Geonosis, and then stare angrily at George Lucas. You know, Lucas even retconned, like, his own movie. It's not as literal, but, like, when Anakin says, my powers have doubled since we last met, he's clearly talking about Geonosis. He does not mean their fight on, what, Kamino? Like a couple weeks ago? That Anakin voice is spot on. Thank you. And have I read Lost Stars? I have. Loved Lost Stars. All right. It's, yeah, that last Dooku line. Dooku directed the Force. So good. The fight on Naboo. Do they fight on Naboo? With Dooku? Or are you talking about Maul? Let me take a second to... Dark Disciple, that's true. That was also pretty recent. Oh, right, the attempt on the Chancellor. Yeah, I guess they did fight there. Yeah, when Cad Bane helped. Interesting. Yeah. Is that the last one? It's, yeah, I'm struggling, you know, to keep an order of Clone Wars arcs, but yeah, that probably is at least close to it. Anakin fights Dooku 1v1, that's true. In the like, what is it, the dining room around a big table. I had actually forgotten about that one, thank you. Kenobi of Austin Ventress escape. Huku? Goku? Wouldn't it be so funny if George had just named Count Dooku Count Goku?
growing up with Clone Wars. Clone Wars Anakin is very cool. And this Anakin, I think, is a great capturing of that Anakin. Very charming, very strong. They sort of help by making their last fight Anakin alone. That does help a little bit. Makes it at least a little like, yeah, But it still is like, it's less impactful than, when he took Anakin's arm. But, I always respect, the Clone Wars people occasionally tried to make things work. This time we take them together, yeah. Well, but that's also a reference to Attack of the Clones, really, is, Anakin charging in alone and getting his arm cut off. But yeah, they still, they make sure to not completely undo it, not make it nonsensical, which is nice. And to retcon the retcons, exactly. All right. He drew their strikes to his parries, and drove his own ripostes with dark thrusts of power that subtly altered the Jedi's balance and disrupted their timing. He could have slaughtered both of them as casually as that creature Maul had destroyed the Vigos of the Black Sun. However, only one death was in his plan, and this dumb show was becoming tiresome. Not to mention tiring. The dark power that served him only went so far, and he was, after all, not a young man. He leaned into a thrust at Kenobi's gut that the Jedi Master deflected with a rising parry, bringing them chest to chest, blades flaring, locked together a handbreadth from each other's throats. "Your moves are too slow, Kenobi. Too predictable. You'll have to do better." Kenobi's response to this friendly word was to regard him with a twinkle of gentle amusement in his eye. "Very well, then," the Jedi said, and shot straight upward over Dooku's head so fast it seemed he'd vanished. And in the space where Kenobi's chest had been was now only the blue lightning of Skywalker's blade driving straight for Dooku's heart. Only a desperate whirl to one side made what would have been a smoking hole into his chest into a line of scorch through his armor-weave cloak. Dooku thought, "What?" He threw himself spinning up and away from the two Jedi to land on the situation table, disengaging for a moment to recover his composure. That had been entirely too close. But by the time his boots touched down, Kenobi was there to meet him, blade weaving through a defensive velocity so bewilderingly fast that Dooku dared not even try a strike. He threw a feint toward Kenobi's face, then dropped and spun in a reverse ankle sweep. But not only did Kenobi easily overleap this attack, Dooku nearly lost his own foot to a slash from Skywalker, who had again come out of nowhere and now carved through the table so that it collapsed under Dooku's weight and dumped the Sith Lord unceremoniously to the floor. This was not in the plan. Take a second there because I saw, thank you, Sam, for the roses. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you, Matter Babby, for the follow. I appreciate that too. I'm glad to have you. Let's see, strange they were so meticulous about Anakin Grievous, but just kind of gave up on Dooku. Yeah, I guess George just wanted them to fight again, and he knew he could get away with it. Obi-Wan and Anakin using 1% of their power, exactly. It's, they've been holding back all this time. Skywalker slammed his following strike down so hard that the shock of deflecting it buckled Dooku's elbows. Dooku threw himself into a back roll that brought him to his feet, and Kenobi's blade was there to meet his neck. Only a desperate whirling slash block, coupled with a wheel kick that caught Kenobi on the thigh, bought him enough time to leap away again, and when he touched down, Skywalker was already there. The first overhand chop of Skywalker's blade slid off Dooku's instinctive guard. The second bent Dooku's wrist. The third flash of blue forced Dooku's scarlet blade so far to the inside that his own lightsaber scorched his shoulder, and Dooku was forced to give ground. Dooku felt himself blanch. Where had this come from? Skywalker came on, mechanically inexorable, impossibly powerful, a destroyer droid with a lightsaber. Each step a blow, and each blow a step. Dooku backed away as fast as he dared. Skywalker stayed right on top of him. Dooku's breath went short and hard. He no longer tried to block Skywalker's strikes, but only to guide them slanting away. He could not meet Skywalker's strength to strength. Not only did the boy wield tremendous reserves of force energy, but his sheer physical power was astonishing. And only then did Dooku understand that he'd been suckered.
Skywalker's Shien ready stance had been a ruse, as had his Ataro gymnastics. The boy was a gem so stylist, and as fine a one as Dooku had ever seen. His own Good lord. Let me take a break as I keep stuttering. I'll take that back from His own elegant Makashi simply did not generate the kinetic power to meet Gem So head-to-head, especially not while also defending against a second attacker. It was time to alter his own tactics. He dropped low and spun into another reverse ankle sweep. The weakness of Gem So was its lack of mobility, that slapped Skywalker's boot sharply enough to throw the young Jedi off balance, giving Dooku the opportunity to leap away, only to find himself again facing the wheel of blue lightning that was Kenobi's blade. Dooku decided that the comedy had ended. Now it was time to kill. Kenobi's master had been Qui-Gon Jinn, Dooku's own Padawan. Dooku had fenced Qui-Gon thousands of times, and he knew every weakness of the Ataro form, with its ridiculous acrobatics. He drove a series of flashing thrusts toward Kenobi's legs to draw the Jedi Master into a flipping overhead leap so that Dooku could burn through his spine from kidneys to shoulder blades. And this image, this plan, was so clear in Dooku's mind that he almost failed to notice that Kenobi met every one of his thrusts without so much as moving his feet, staying perfectly centered, perfectly balanced. Blade never moving a millimeter more than was necessary, deflecting without effort, riposting with flickering strikes and stabs swifter than the tongue of a Garolian ghost viper. And when Dooku felt Skywalker regain his feet and stride once more towards his back, he finally registered the source of that blinding defensive velocity Kenobi had used a moment ago. And only then, belatedly, did he understand that Kenobi's Ataro and Shi-Cho had been ploys as well. Kenobi had become a master of Soresu. Dooku found himself having a sudden, unexpected, overpowering, and entirely distressing bad feeling about this. His farce had suddenly, inexplicably spun from humorous to deadly serious, and was tumbling rapidly toward terrifying. Realization burst through Dooku's consciousness like the blossoming fireballs of dying ships outside. This pair of Jedi fools had somehow managed to become entirely dangerous. These clowns might, just possibly, actually be able to beat him. No sense taking chances. Even his master would agree with that. Lord Sidious could come up with a new plan more easily than a new apprentice. I'm going to take another pause there. I love that line. That's so much fun. Like, oh, do you think, Dooku? I think he could come up with a new apprentice pretty easily. I think, in fact, if you killed Skywalker here, he would have a lot of difficulty with both of those things. Let's see. He gathered the Force once more, in a single indrawn breath that summoned power from throughout the universe. The slightest whip crack of that power, negligent as a flick of his wrist, sent Kenobi flying backward to crash hard against the wall, but Dooku didn't have time to enjoy it. Skywalker was all over him. The shining blue lightsaber whirled and spat, and every overhand chop crashed against Dooku's defense with the unstoppable power of a meteor strike. The Sith Lord spent lavishly of his reserve of the Force, merely to meet these attacks without being cut in half, and Skywalker was getting stronger. Each parry cost Dooku more power than he'd used to throw Kenobi across the room. Each block aged him a decade. He decided he'd best revise his strategy once again. He no longer even tried to strike back. Force exhaustion began to close down his perceptions, drawing his consciousness back down to his physical form, trapping him within his own skull until he could barely even feel the contours of the room around him. He dimly sensed stairs at his back, stairs that led up to the entrance balcony. He retreated up them, using the higher ground for leverage, but Skywalker just kept on coming, tirelessly ferocious. That blue blade was everywhere, flashing and whirling faster and faster until Kenobi's... That blue blade was everywhere, flashing and whirling faster and faster until Dooku saw the room through an electric haze, and now Kenobi was back in the picture. With a shout of the Force, he shot like a torpedo up the stairs behind Skywalker, and Dooku decided that under these rather extreme circumstances, it was at least arguably permissible for a gentleman to cheat. "Guards," he said to the pair of super battle droids that still stood at attention to either side of the entrance, "open fire!" Instantly, the two droids sprang forward and lifted their hands. Energy hammered out from the heavy blasters built into their arms. Skywalker whirled, and his blade batted every blast back at the droids, whose mirror-polished carapace armor deflected the bolts again. Galvaned particle beams screeched through the room in blinding ricochets. Kenobi reached the top of the stairs, and a single slash of his lightsaber dismantled both droids. Before their pieces could even hit the floor, Dooku was in motion, landing a spinning side stamp that folded Skywalker in half. He used his last burst of dark power to continue his spin into a blindingly fast wheel kick that brought his heel against the portion of Kenobi's chin. Brought his heel against the point of Kenobi's chin with a crack like the report of a huge boar slug thrower, knocking the Jedi Master back down the stairs. Sounded like he'd broken his neck. Wouldn't that be lovely? There was no sense in taking chances, however. While Kenobi's bonelessly limp body was still tumbling toward the floor far below, Dooku sent a surge of energy through the Force. Kenobi's fall suddenly accelerated like a missile, burning the last of its drives before impact. The Jedi Master struck the floor at a steep angle, skidded along it, and slammed into the wall so hard the hydro-foamed permacrete buckled and collapsed onto him. This, Dooku found exceedingly gratifying. Now, as for Skywalker, which was as far as Dooku got, because by the time his attention returned to the younger Jedi, his vision was rather completely obstructed by the sole of a boot approaching his face with something resembling terminal velocity. The impact was a blast of white fire, and there was a second impact against his back that was the balcony rail, and then the room turned upside down and he fell toward the ceiling, but not really, of course. It only felt that way because he had flipped over the rail, and he was falling headfirst toward the floor, and neither his arms nor his legs were paying any attention to what he was trying to make them do. The Force seemed to be busy elsewhere, and really, the whole process was entirely mortifying. Howdy, Megan, thank you. He was barely able to summon a last surge of dark power before what would have been a disabling impact. The Force cradled him, cushioning his fall and setting him on his feet. He dusted himself off and fixed a supercilious gaze on Skywalker, who now stood upon the balcony looking down at him, and Dooku couldn't hold the stare. He found this reversal of their original positions entirely unsettling. There was something troublingly appropriate about it. Seeing Skywalker standing, where Dooku himself had stood only moments ago, it was as though he was trying to remember a dream he'd never actually had. He pushed this aside, drawing once more upon the certain knowledge of his personal invincibility to open a channel to the Force. Power flowed into him, and the weight of his years dropped away. He lifted his blade and beckoned. Skywalker leapt from the balcony. Even as the boy hurtled downward, Dooku felt a new twist in the currents of the Force between them, and he finally understood. He understood how Skywalker was getting stronger, why he no longer spoke, how he had become a machine of battle. He understood why Sidious had been so interested in him for so long. Skywalker was a natural. There was a thermonuclear furnace where his heart should be, and it was burning through the firewalls of his Jedi training. He held the Force in the clench of a white-hot fist. He was half Sith already, and he didn't even know it. This boy had the gift of fury. And even now he was holding himself back. Even now, as he landed at Dooku's flank and rained blows upon the Sith Lord's defenses, even as he drove Dooku backwards step after step, Dooku could feel how Skywalker kept his fury banked behind walls of will, walls that were hardened by some uncontrollable dread. Dread, Dooku surmised, of himself. Of what might happen if he should ever allow that furnace he used for a heart to go supercritical. Dooku slipped aside for an overhand chop and sprang backward. "I sense great fear in you. You are consumed by it. Hero with no fear, indeed. You're a fraud, Skywalker. You are nothing but a posturing child." He pointed his lightsaber at the young Jedi like an accusing finger. "Aren't you a little old to be afraid of the dark?" Skywalker leapt for him again, and this time Dooku met the boy's charge easily. They stood nearly toe-to-toe, blades flashing faster than the eye could see, but Skywalker had lost his edge. A simple taunt was all that had been required to shift the focus of his attention from winning the fight to controlling his own emotions. The angrier he got, the more afraid he became, and the fear fed his anger in turn. Like the proverbial Corellian multipede, now that he had started thinking about what he was doing, he could no longer walk. Dooku allowed himself to relax. He felt that spirit of playfulness coming over him again, as he and Skywalker spun round each other in their lethal dance. Whatever fun was to be had, he should enjoy while he could. Take one last second. It's a nod to Return of the Jedi when Luke knocks Vader from the top of the stairs. Yep. A lot of this fight is, intentionally meant to mirror what happens with Luke, particularly, when they have their enemies defeated and Anakin chooses to execute Dooku where Luke chooses to spare Vader. It's, showing Anakin being put in Luke's position and making the wrong choices. There's only one last brief bit in Chapter 3, but I want to mention another reference here that I love. Or, really, this is the first half, and then it's referenced later. When Matthew Stover wrote his own book about Luke, set a little bit after Return of the Jedi, and Luke meets a Force-sensitive villain who sort of attacks him, and, they fight and all. But the villain had met Jedi before he fought Mace Windu during the Clone Wars, and eventually the villain has a comment about why he understands that Luke will not make the same mistakes as the Jedi who came before, why Luke is greater than the old Jedi, and he says, unlike the Jedi of old, you are not afraid of the dark. And it's, Stover intentionally including the other half of what Dooku just said to Anakin. Should he have spared Dooku? Yes, he should have. Dooku was near harmless. Hands cut off, beaten. There was nothing Dooku could have done with him. And there was a lot of information that Dooku could have revealed. Frankly, if he had spared Dooku after Palpatine made that gambit, Dooku could have just said, hey, Palpatine is the Sith Lord. We've been working together this whole time. Everything would have been pretty okay if he had spared Dooku. But Anakin couldn't manage it. All right, let's finish off Chapter 3. Then Sidious, for some reason, decided to intervene. "Don't fear what you're feeling, Anakin. Use it," he barked in Palpatine's voice. "Call upon your fury, focus it, and he cannot stand against you. Rage is your weapon. Strike now! Strike! Kill him!" Dooku thought blankly. Kill me? He and Skywalker paused for one single, final instant, blades locked together, staring at each other past a sizzling cross of scarlet against blue, and in that instant, Dooku found himself wondering in bewildered astonishment if Sidious had suddenly lost his mind. Didn't he understand the advice he'd just given? Whose side was he on, anyway? And through the cross of their blades he saw in Skywalker's eyes the promise of hell, and he felt a sickening presentiment that he already knew the answer to that question. Treachery is the way of the Sith. There it is. There it is, that gem. For those who... I don't know how many people here haven't read the book, and for those who missed Chapter 2, Dooku had been reflecting on how treachery is the way of the Sith, how he planned to betray every ally they had, from the Separatist Council to Grievous. You know, he thought he and Palpatine were the ones betraying everyone else, and now he's learning, no, you were one of the patsies. You're no different from the rest of them. And yeah, what a way to end the chapter. You know, I absolutely love that ending. That moment where Dooku realizes exactly what's going on here is so satisfying. All right. I'm dropping drips left and right. I need a cup that condenses less. But yeah, there goes Chapter 3. More. Now,
I gotta stop now. I mean, you hear towards the end, I'm slipping over my tongue more often than not. If I keep going, it's gonna be a very, very long, very stuttering reading. So I'm doing a chapter a week, and we'll return next Sunday at 10 EST as well. But I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thank you. I'm thrilled that which is so good. Aw, shucks. And this book is so good too. It's a masterpiece. I am absolutely in love with Revenge of the Sith. Think you just started the Dooku fight yourself? Nice. Getting to the good stuff. I will be, I'm behind on uploading the second chapter to YouTube, but I'm gonna post the third chapter to YouTube as well, probably today, just to get it so that if you ever want to go back and re-listen, see, this is how people are supposed to read, bring the book alive. Well, exactly. That's why I was so interested in doing this, and why Rex, no. I'm toppling my whole shelf. I've always felt that there's a way to read it. It invites this sort of lyrical approach. I've referred to it a lot as a full book of poetry, and maybe that's exaggeration a little bit, but I really do love it. And yeah, you get so little of Dooku's internality. Exactly. He's so infinitely better in this than he is in the movie. As fun as the movie is, Dooku's kind of just there and then he dies. Here, he gets a full sequence diving into his character, and it really feels like this is why Dooku was here in the first place. Greetings and bienvenue. How you doing, Rick? But yeah, I'm gonna be hopping off in a minute. We'll be back again, as I said, next Sunday at 10. Gosh, I didn't even read anything. I took it down for no reason. So good. Thank you. I thank you all so much for joining me. It's a delight. I'm so thrilled that people enjoy listening to the readings. This is something, I would have loved to do at any point, but quite frankly, if you'd asked me a year ago, I would say there's no way anyone would possibly care to listen to a live reading of Revenge of the Sith. So I'm appreciative of all of you that join me here. I should start I made a Discord page, and I need to figure out more about how to get Discord actually working and good, because right now it's just a blank nothing. And Artemis is saying, yeah, you need to set an alarm. I want to make the Discord because then I can push to at anyone who wants to follow, hey, going live reading Revenge of the Sith if you want to join. So I'm really gonna work on getting that set up. Hopefully by Thursday. I won't be going live this Thursday for obvious reasons, actually. But I think Friday probably. And yeah, just having some kind of notification would be nice. This was so fun. Thank you. I'm glad. Did you finish the newest Vader book? I'm still only about halfway. I have not gotten as much time to read as I would like. And I'm busy. One of the obvious reasons. Yeah, I've got some taxes to do. I've got, chores around the house. Simple stuff. Oh, thank you for all the corn, Rick. But yeah, that's going to be all for today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you in a week. I'll see you hopefully on Discord soon. I may look more into that today, actually. I've got the rest of my day. Figure out how to get a Discord server, good. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. And as always, may the Force be with all of you.